Hi everybody, Saffola is one of the most legendary companies in the Indian business history. In the past 21 years, the stock price of its parent company Marico has shot up by 17,200%, going from just 2.67 rupees to 487 rupees in 2022. And if you look at the market share of Saffola in its category, it stood at an insane market share of 81% as of 2021. And they literally have been the undisputed king in the ultra premium edible oil segment for the past 30 years. The question is, how did the Mariwala family turn Saffola into such an iconic brand in India? What exactly was their business strategy that enabled them to stay ahead of their giant competitors like ITC and Hindustan Unilever? And most importantly, what are the business lessons that we need to learn from the iconic rise of Saffola in India? This video is brought to you by ET Money, but more on this at the end of the video. This is a story that dates way back to 1960s. During this time, a medical research identified safflower oil as a beneficial ingredient to heart health. This was because it had a higher proportion of something called polyunsaturated fatty acids. But the problem back then was that only crude safflower oil was available in the market and it had a very bitter taste. So every month, the Mariwala family would receive postcards from heart patients who were requesting a few liters of oil to be refined. And when this started to happen consistently, the Mariwala family would make special arrangements for refining a small quantity of safflower oil. And this is when they thought maybe there is a bigger market for safflower oil in India. And when looked deeper, it turns out that India was home to one of the highest number of heart and diabetes patients in the world. In fact, even today, if you look at the stats, the public health estimates indicate that India accounts for approximately 60% of the world's heart disease burden. And the heart disease is the number one cause of mortality and is a silent epidemic among Indians. But in spite of the existence of this major problem, there were three major gaps in the market. Number one, like I said before, only crude safflower oil was available in the market, which was very bitter in taste. Number two, there were very few refining companies in the market and most of them were unbranded and unreliable. This was the reason why doctors could not recommend safflower oil even if they wanted to. And lastly, the patients either had to get it refined from a local businessman or they had to completely cut off oil from their diet. And as you all know, it's very difficult to resist when your dinner table looks like this. This is when in 1965, the Mariwala family decided to launch a product under the Bombay Oil Company, and this brand is what we all know today as Saffola. Now, looking at the humongous market size and the dire need for the product, most of us would think that Bombay Oil very easily captured the Indian market, right? Well, not really guys. Because you see, whenever you are the first mover in the market, while there is no threat from competitors, the biggest threat to your brand is actually unawareness. And this is something that you'll see with a lot of game-changing products. Classic example is Prega News. If you saw our case study, you would know that in spite of Prega News being as affordable as 50 rupees, in spite of it offering extreme convenience of detecting pregnancy without going to the doctor, the rural women had no idea what a pregnancy detection kit was. And even if they did not know how to spell the term pregnancy detection kit. Similarly, over here, establishing factories and selling the product was not enough. The Mariwala family actually had to create awareness about Saffola and heart ailments. So the Saffola team identified three critical stakeholders to build a solid name in the market. The first stakeholder were doctors who would recommend Saffola to their patients. And obviously, once a patient is recommended a product by the doctors, it would turn them into lifelong buyers. And the second stakeholder were consumers who had heart issues. So very systematically, the Saffola team started with heart health campaigns in partnership with leading medical institutes like Escorts Health Institute, Bombay Hospital and others. Apart from that, several conferences were held among the circles of cardiologists to spread the word about the product. Secondly, from the consumer standpoint, both awareness campaigns and free cholesterol checks were conducted so that people would know that Saffola stands for healthy heart. And soon enough, by 1990s, the scale of these campaigns were so huge that they were being conducted in 9 cities and for 85 lakh people. In fact, the company even started a Dial a Dietitian program whereby people from all across the country could speak to nutrition experts and they could seek advice about diets and lifestyle from these experts. This way, Saffola added so much value in the life of the patients without selling the product that by default, the perception of Saffola shaped up as a dependable and authentic brand that really cares about its customers. So this way, the patient's market was captured. Now you see, after building this degree of trust in the patient's market, everything looks perfect, right? Well, not really guys, because there's a big problem over here. You see, for an FMCG product like Saffola, the market of heart patients is very, very small. And if Saffola sold products only to patients, they would be perceived more like a medical product that is only meant for sick people. This is when the Saffola team realized that the biggest market for their product is not the segment of people affected by heart disease, but the segment of people who want to prevent heart disease. This is the reason why they started to tap into the third group of stakeholders, who are people who wanted to prevent heart disease, which was literally a 10 times bigger market as compared to the patient's market. And they did that through extensive TV commercials to enlighten people about 4 major risk factors that cause heart problems: obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and smoking. This was followed by radio campaigns, newspaper ads, and more. And each one of them communicated the exact same message, and that is to prevent heart disease. Now, I don't know how many of you actually remember this, but then way back, Saffola very cleverly designed this ad by telling the story of 45 plus obese men whose wives were extremely concerned about the health of the husband. And the beauty of these commercials was that although the consumer was primarily the man of the house, the customer were the women of the house who took the decision about which oil to use. So the commercial very, very cleverly instills fear in the minds of housewives, which automatically led to wide-scale acceptance of Saffola. So all these campaigns put together, they created such a fruitful impact that a survey carried out reflected that 80% of the user base would shift to Saffola from other oils. And this clearly states that the marketing was nothing short of extraordinary. The best part was that because Saffola had created such an insane awareness about its brand and also provided the life-saving value add, the company was able to sell product at an ultra-premium cost. This is how Saffola established itself as an ultra-premium product in the market. Now the question over here is, when this heart oil market was such a huge market with huge margins and a huge potential to grow, how is it that other brands like ITC and Hindustan Unilever couldn't beat Saffola? Well, this is where Saffola's brand protection strategy comes in. You know guys, in the 80s, both HUL and ITC actually saw the opportunity in the sunflower market, and they came out with their own products named Flora by HUL and Sundrop by ITC. And even they spent a ton on high intensity advertising and claimed health benefits just like Saffola. And to attack Saffola, they even priced their products at 5 to 10% lower cost than Saffola. This is what started a ferocious pricing war between 3 of the biggest FMCG brands in India, which were Marico, ITC and HUL. Now the threat over here was that if Marico brought down the price of Saffola, they would lose out on the humongous profit margins of the product, and once they lower their prices by 10%, they cannot suddenly hike their prices. To put it in numbers, if they sell 10 crore units at 10 rupees lesser cost, they would lose 100 crore rupees right away. But at the same time, if they did not lower the prices, HUL and ITC would erode their market share and kill Saffola. So the question is, what did Saffola do? Well, they did neither of these two things. Instead, they opted in for the third option and introduced a low-cost variant called Sweekar Sunflower to protect the premium brand of Saffola. And this strategy is something that many of the brands have also used. Now, if you remember from our Havells episode, Havells fans and Crabtree switches both have established themselves as premium brands. But as competitors started targeting the lower segment, they tackled them by placing their own sub-brand like Standard fans and Rio switches. Similarly, BBK does this with OnePlus, Oppo and Realme. So this way, the brand perception and value of the premium brand is not diluted. At the same time, the company also has a hold over the lower segment of the market, and this prevents competition from achieving economy of scale and eroding the market share of the premium product. In this case, Sweekar targeted ITC and HUL in every aspect, matching price, media share and distribution reach. And by 1991, Sweekar and Saffola both put together achieved a leadership as the number 1 brand in refined oil edible market with a 14% market share. And together, they got way ahead of their competition. In fact, in 1998, Sweekar was the second largest brand after ITC's Sundrop, and it had revenues of 100 crore rupees and sold 3 times the volumes of Saffola. But you know what? In spite of selling such high volumes, it only contributed 1/3 of Saffola's unit margin. So you see, although ITC and Sweekar were selling high volumes, they could not even come close to Saffola's profits. This is how Marico protected Saffola's brand perception and profits from falling. And the last aspect of Saffola that actually fascinated me was the brilliant business acumen of Harsh Mariwala and how brilliantly he enters the untouched market. In his book Harsh Realities, he talks about the troubles of safflower market. This is a story that dates way back to the 1990s, and during this time there was a dire shortage of safflower seeds in the market. And the problem was that it was a single season crop, so they had only 3 months to stack up the raw material inventory for the entire year. And because Marico was the only importer of safflower in India, the shipments used to take several months to arrive. So because of this, working capital suffered, Higher interest costs impacted Saffola's financials, and overall, they had no other option but to increase their cost. And this was very, very risky for the brand value of Saffola. Meanwhile, during the same time, medical opinion also started changing, and along with polyunsaturated fatty acid, doctors also suggested a balance of both poly and monounsaturated fatty acid. And if Saffola were to provide a balance of both poly and monounsaturated fatty acids, the only option was blending of two oils together. But back then, the government of India did not permit the blending of oils. Why? Because it would have widened the scope of adulteration by manufacturers. Now, in this case, any entrepreneur would just consider this rule to be an unsolvable constraint and would have just moved on, right? But you know what, guys? Mr. Harsh actually gathered his team of food technologists and asked them to come up with scientific arguments as to why blending and adulterating are two completely different things. And they convinced the government itself that blending would bring in multiple benefits to the market, which were: number one, the traders could sell blended oils during the bad agricultural seasons without fluctuation and shortages. Number two, the customers could get better prices because blended oils will help the industry offer consumer packs at stable prices and different price points because of the composition. And lastly, to the farmer, it offered greater flexibility to grow different oilseeds based on weather patterns. So it was a win-win-win for all the stakeholders. So the tech team of Saffola petitioned the Food and Drugs Department itself and did everything in their capacity to convince the government. And guess what? Finally, the government officially granted permission for oil blends in 1998. And now, Marico could launch safflower oil blends with corn oil and raspberry oil in addition to their existing product range. In fact, you must have also seen these products in red and green bottles. As a result, Saffola was further able to extend its offering and again became a first mover in the market. And now, they no longer had supply shortages, no more struggles with profit margins, and no more compulsive price hikes. This is how the Mariwala family created a multi-million-dollar brand with Saffola, and today they have a market share of 81% in the super premium edible oil segment and stand as a market leader for 30 long years now. And this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that are the lessons that we need to learn from the iconic rise of Saffola. But before we move on, I would like to give you a disclaimer. People, please do not consider any of our contents to be investment advices. We make business case studies to develop your business acumen, and these should not be considered as stock tips. But if you really want to make strategic investments into the stock market, you should check out our partners ET Money. They have a membership called ET Money Genius that gives you customized stock portfolios as per your risk appetite for different investment horizons. The portfolio consists of mostly high quality in-demand stocks to help you get good returns without waiting for many years. And did you know, out of the last 15 years, if you would have invested in Genius high growth portfolio for any 7 years, you would have got 22.4% yearly returns. So if this sounds useful to you, we have left a special link in the description to download the ET Money app. And once you download it, get the ET Money Genius membership to get started. Moving on to the lessons from the case study, the first thing we need to learn is that just because you have invented an amazing solution to a critical problem doesn't mean the market will straight away embrace you. So you have to first educate the consumer about the existence of the problem and then educate them about the product, which is actually a solution to the problem. In our case, Prega News did this with awareness campaigns for rural women. Saffola did this with heart health awareness campaigns for the Indian middle class. And only then did people actually value them. Number 2, if you have cultivated the ability to command a premium price, that little delta of 10% is $1 billion asset. So never ever dilute your brand perception because of your competition. Apple does this by avoiding the low cost lineup itself. Volkswagen does this by diversifying into sub-brands based on different segments. And Saffola did this with its low cost sub-brand called Sweekar. And lastly, as Dhirubhai Ambani once said, an obstacle in business can either be treated as an obstacle or a competition killer. In this case, while the lack of safflower supply prevented players from entering the market, Saffola entered the market and became the first mover in the industry. While government rules prevented players from entering the safflower oil market, Harsh Mariwala challenged the rule itself and turned it into an opportunity with their blended oils and again made a ton of profits and got rid of the supply problems. And this is what made him one of the most legendary businessmen of his era. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.